Hi, I want to share one more tech tool with you that I absolutely love, and that is Edulastic. I started using Edulastic just a year ago, and I used it as a complete replacement for all of my formative and summative assessments, and I was so happy that I did. There is so much to learn in Edulastic. I can't cover it all in one video, but I am going to hook you guys up with some resources, and I would highly encourage you to consider using it this school year for your formative and summative assessments. My main focus in this video is to kind of show you what I love most about it and what it can do, not necessarily how to set it up. So you'll need to make that decision if it's something that you want. And then I have a link to a quick start guide to help you guys do all of that. So in order to access Edulastic, you're going to go to edulastic.com, sign in with Google. I'm going to start by talking about this toolbar over here on the left-hand side. When you get into your account, there is a demo playground, so you can go play around with Edulastic and discover all the awesome things that it can do in kind of like a error-free environment. So anything that you do in there will just be for you to learn. You don't have to worry about messing things up. I'm going to start by talking about the item bank. I use Google Forms for a long time, and they have lots of question types that you can use in Google Forms, but nowhere near as many as what Edulastic offers. Also, for those of us that teach subjects that need unique formulas or equations, symbols, things like that, there's a lot of that embedded into Edulastic. I'm going to click on New Item. So this would be me authoring a question for me. There's the standard kind of multiple choice that we're used to, but I want to talk about like the fill in the blank. There's drag and drop, text drop down, text entry, so forth. I love this feature where you can put an image in as a background and then you can drag and drop, or you can just type in, or however you choose to set it up. But you can do that with maps, obviously, which is what they have there. But I've also uploaded images of like a math problem and had kids like drag and label where the things go within the picture. It could also be good for something in a science class, like labeling the anatomy of something or labeling the parts of something maybe in a shop class, whatever you happen to be teaching. So I really like those features, things that you can't necessarily do in Google Forms. These questions right here, the class match and order, are very similar to things that you do with Google Forms, but also some things that you can't, like the sequencing. The writing, there's a lot of tools and features within the writing and passages that would be awesome for our ELA teachers. I spent a lot of time last year on the math types of questions. In the math types of questions, you're able to use formulas, symbols, expressions that don't are not normally easy to use in a Google Form type situation or any really digital assessment tool. But they're all embedded in here in one program, which makes the use or the need for like Equasio kind of irrelevant. And you don't have to worry about using that one. Along with the math, there's charts and graphs that are also helpful. I spend a lot of time making questions that are multi-part questions, which is a lot of how we ask students questions at the high school level. So I would ask them to do one thing, solve this equation, get a coordinate point, write an equation with it. You can do that with the math, text, and drop down, but those are the three question types that you are then limited to. So I switched to doing a lot of combinations. So part A, do this first, and then you can embed any type of question that you want within part A. You can combine graphing questions with math equation questions with matching and reordering and classifying. So I did a lot of that. The question types can be a bit overwhelming. So let me pick one. And what's nice about this is when you get in here, you can edit so many features within the question itself. But on every question type, there's this how to author button. So you get into a question type and you're like, hold on, I don't really, what do these boxes mean? How do I add more? How do I get my picture in there? Any of that stuff. You click on how to author and it will take you through what to do. Sometimes there's a video to watch, but as you can see on this one, it's just going to kind of click me through exactly where I need to click at to include the stuff that I need for the question that I'm trying to ask my student. Additionally, underneath the possible responses, I like this area so you can have multiple different answers that you can use, and you can have different versions of answers. So like if this is an acceptable answer, you can have that, but then maybe this other thing is also an alternative answer, then you can add that in there as well. So it can, and then it'll auto grade it for you, whatever you have in there once you have your correct answer set. And when I scroll down here, um, you can enable auto scoring, or you can take that off so that you could do all the scoring and whatnot yourself. Sometimes there's also a hint feature, which is right down here. So maybe this is going to be a tricky question for students. And I know as a teacher, a lot of students are going to have this question. And so then I can go ahead and type in my hint down there so that kids, when they're working in the question, they'll see this hint option and they can click on that and then see the hint that I would normally give them in class to help steer or guide them along in the right direction. It doesn't pop up automatically. They have to choose if they want the hint. And a lot of my students would try it on their own, and then I would give them a hint. And if that hint didn't work, then I can add another hint. And so it's kind of like you're there for them when you're not, and you're not able to be there whenever they happen to choose to be working on their project or assignment. So you can hit publish from then, and it would be in there, and then you can put it into any item bank that you want. I'm going to come over here to test. All assessments are labeled as tests, and then there is a difference between formative and summative, and I'll show that to you. So these are all tests that I've authored. Over here on the left-hand side, I can clear the filters that I've chosen if I wanted to, and it would show me whatever. So right now I'm looking at the entire library. I can look at ones that are shared with me, ones that are created by me, or that might be ones that I'm co-authoring in or whatnot. There's also filters in terms of the collections. And so you can look at any that you have, Public Library, Engaged New York, Edulastic Certified. So you can import other questions. You don't have to author all your own. I did, but it was just because that's what worked best for me in my curriculum. So I'm going to pull up one of the assignments that I have. Anytime you see an assignment, whether it's one you've authored or one that's already in there, you can preview it and you're going to view it as a student. So this is how the students would see the question that I gave to them. And they would come in here and they could type in their responses. Notice when I type in here, I have numerical values. Here, this is just a value that I wanted them to have. Sometimes more stuff may pop up in there depending. So you can choose what keyboard it is that your students see. Sometimes they would have math symbols that would pop up in there, whatever the question required. And you take care of that in the authoring. If a student is stuck on a question, they can bookmark it and come back to it, which is a nice feature. When they look at this drop down, this grayed out thing means they haven't got to that question yet. And then the flag obviously means that they have bookmarked that question. There is a scratch pad. So if students want to have tools to actually do the work on the screen, they have that to work with. They can delete it, they can save it. And what's really awesome is that you can view their scratch pad. They can also magnify it. So if they have vision issues or sometimes the screen just gets wonky or whatever, they can choose to view that. And then you'll also notice that, I can't get off of this. There is an accessibility feature. So under this test options, you can change the color contrast of it if it's students that have vision issues, or you can also zoom it in and zoom it out. Going on to another question type, this is a drop-down box. So I can pre-put in there the answers that they could choose from, or I could be an open response where they can type something in. This is an example of when symbols pop up because that's how I authored the test to be there because the kids were going to need to be able to use some of these math symbols. When I go on to one more question, here's what a graphing question might look like. This is a multi-part question. So they had to graph it, and then you'll see that it says part B. There was extra stuff that they had to do after that. Here's a show hint. So I left them a hint to help them know what it is I expected out of them or how they needed to author it. What is not showing up on this side, because I'm just previewing the questions, I'm not in there as a student, is that there's another box that pops up here that says check answer. So you can set how many times a student can check their answer. So what happens with that is that students are getting immediate feedback, which is really nice and handy. And so the students can be told if they are right or if they're wrong. It does depend on how you choose to set up your answers and how the kids type them in because it is case sensitive and space sensitive. So that's why I try to do some that are drop down ones and then let the kids know that sometimes it'll tell them they're wrong, but it always comes back to did you spell correctly? Did you use the correct format? Like in math, a lot of times the students will put X, Y, and not put the parentheses around it. And so those are conversations you can talk to your kids about. So Oh, here's a multiple choice question, and I'm going to exit. I'm going to go to assign now so you guys can see what this looks like. When you go to assign a test, you can choose what that looks like. And there's so many options here. And they came up with a new feature last year that there's default settings. So if there's things you select all the time that you can pick default settings. So review and previews for me were my formative assessments. Test day was the actual test that kids were taking. And so I had different settings for those 2 days because those were the two types of assessments that I would give. And then I could just default to those so I didn't have to go through and pick them all the time. It is synced with your Google Classroom, which mine are archived now, so that's why it's not showing up there. But you can choose when it opens, when it closes, if it's going to start automatically or if you want to manually start it, all those types of things are there. Under test behavior, it can be a class assessment or a practice assessment. So formatives are practice, and the tests are more like a class assessment. Practice assessments are when the check answer feature can come up. And you can make all these other decisions about what shows up and how your test operates. There's anti-cheating, which I love for my tests. So I would put under the anti-cheating, I would put shuffle items, shuffle answer options, all those types of things to make it harder for the kids to cheat if that's what they were going to choose to do. And when we were teaching in a remote environment, that was huge because nobody was on the same question at the same time because they were all shuffled up. You can also restrict question navigation, which means kids wouldn't be able to go back to the questions they had already seen if that's something that you wanted. This safe exam browser is something that's set up at the district level. And since we don't have a district membership, I haven't looked into that too much. Under auto redirect, I allow students to make multiple attempts at assignments. So if they do a formative assessment, don't do well on them, I want them to have the opportunity to do it again and to continue to learn. And so here's where I set how many attempts they can have and how many check answers they could also have. So I felt like I talked really fast because there's so many amazing things in Edulastic. If you would like to learn more about it, please come see me or check out the quick start guides and the Edulastic tutorials that are available.